All right. Go Beyond Summit. You are so fortunate to be able to meet Larry Minikis, the founder of avstim.com. That's A as in audio, V as in visual. STEM is short for stimulation, audiovisual stimulation.com. It's avstim.com. He made one of the most incredible products that we've used for about 15 years with athleticism and all of our athletes. It's called Mind Spa. It balances, and not only balances, but it actually heightens the levels of your awareness in your alpha, your theta, and your delta mind frequencies. It's fantastic. And it has progression levels, duration times that you can build up. This is one of the most incredible products out there. Sue Enquist, who was UCLA's softball coach for about 20 years, was one of the most winningest coaches at UCLA, touted that the Mind Spa was one of the game changers for her student athletes. The girls would use it, their concentration would be better, their practices would be better, their grades jumped up either from C's to B's or from D's to C's or from C's to A's. It was outstanding on how much more focus and concentration they had in works and how much better rest they would get and how much more aware, alert, conscious, creative, grounded they were when they were played. And she became one of the winningest coaches at UCLA. And this tool in her tool shed was Mind Spa, one of the main ones. Just unbelievable. We've used them with our athletes. Larry, we're so excited to hear from you. So I'm going to turn over to you because when you hear Larry speak, it's just absolutely magic. So Larry, let's go back, retrace how you got into working with the mind and the frequencies of the mind.
Justin, thank you for the kind introduction. I appreciate that. Well, I was actually a department store buyer way back in 1980, 81. And my interest actually came then because one of the companies that approached me back then was a biofeedback company. They're still around in Canada called Thought Technologies. And Lawrence Klein, the owner, came to my office and showed me this small little biofeedback device that you put your two fingers on and you hear a little tone. So as you became relaxed, the tone would get lower. And I was really fascinated with it. So I became actually the first department store in the country to stock the device. Going forward, I then left retail, went into Casio, went for Commodore, worked for Commodore Computers and a laptop computer manufacturer way back in the mid-'80s, so very early on. And then around 1990, I was at the Consumer Electronics Show, and I saw this booth with these blinking lights and glasses. And so I was very curious about what it was, and I gave it a shot. I had remembered reading an article in Time magazine in 1989 on this subject about this kind of device, so I was fascinated. I was really tired. If any of you have ever walked a convention all day long, your feet hurt, you're tired, you're just done. And this is about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So I put on these glasses, sat back in a chair with headphones, and I'll show you how that works in a second. And 20 minutes later, I was done and left the booth, walked around. I was amazed. I felt like I was floating on clouds. I was just blown away. So for 2 straight weeks, I called these guys nonstop saying, look, I want to be your California rep. I think this is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. And they said yes. And then lo and behold, I saw an article shortly after that in a magazine called East West Magazine. And I happened to read that there are several manufacturers of these devices because on the cover was the Buddha wearing glasses. I went, oh my God. And the title was, Does the Buddha Wear a Walkman? So I was going up to Seattle to see Costco at that time. And there was a company up there that was manufacturing these devices. I met with the owner. We really hit it off. I felt I had a better opportunity with this company, even though they are much smaller, to grow the company. So I spent about 9.5, 10 years working for this company, building it up, international sales. We had it in Sharper Image. We had it in Hammacher Schlemmer. We had it in dozens of back then, the 90s was still all catalogs. There's no internet really. So we had it nationally in all the catalogs and internationally too. And it was around that time, beginning of the century, I decided to go out on my own, build my own device, because I felt there were things that could be done a lot better. Because what I really wanted to do was develop a device that empowers the individual in how to use it, so that there's no mystery to it, so that they find it really easy to use and can make it, find results for themselves. And around 2002 is when I came out with MindSpa. And now we're on our 6th generation. Looks a lot like this, actually. So this is MindSpa. It's a little handheld device. You just hit the start button, and it comes with earbuds and then these glasses. And as you see, these glasses have 24 LEDs in them, and they flicker at brainwave frequencies. And that's really the basics for it. You keep your eyes closed generally, though you can also use them, because this is removable, with your eyes open. And this can be very good for kids with ADD, ADHD, and these kind of things, because they need to be able to stay busy. If you put glasses on them, they get too fidgety. So when you give them something to do, like look at a computer and such, here, I'll just, so you have an image of how our device looks. It's like this, our packaging. It can be very effective for them. In fact, I was working with a psychologist in the early 1990s, Rama Summer, who's now passed on, who was working with Olympians back then, including Gary Hall Jr., who won, I think it's 13, 14 gold medals in swimming. Gary was extremely ADHD. His parents didn't know what to do with him. They knew he was very talented, but he couldn't focus. So he met Dr. Summer, and Dr. Summer put him on this device, changed his whole life. And that's how. And then the rest of the story we know. He won numerous Olympic medals from that experience. So that's a little bit of the basics, but the way brainwave entrainment works and where it comes from is nothing new. It's actually one of the oldest technologies on Earth. For example, in 200 AD, Ptolemy was using a candle or the sun and had a round disc with slits in it, and would spin the disc. He'd have an assistant spin the disc, and he could put people into hypnotic state. For millennia, shamans have used this as their power, as their magic, using fire, because the flicker rate of fire is close to the alpha brainwave state. Alpha brainwaves are when we're in a relaxed yet focused state. It's what in sports they call the zone. And we're all very familiar with the alpha state. For example, sitting in front of a fire, we've all felt that sort of trance effect from it. So what the shamans would do was use fire and use drum beats. Drum beats are very powerful. And along with MindSpa, it has beats boom, 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 that go along with it. Some are called binaural beats, and others are single beats, just boom, 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 like this. But what they do is that using light and sound is very powerful together, because you're using two of the most important modalities, our sense of sight and our sense of hearing. And so the brain will entrain. In other words, we're always moving at different rhythms. And what the brain will do is that when it comes in contact with an outside stimuli, it will tend to lock in. The best example that we all know is music, the beat of music. Music will entrain us even if we're not paying attention to it. So if it's going really, really fast and such, it can make us feel maybe a little anxious or happily excited. It depends. If it's going really slow, you get what's known as the 454 Mozart effect, which is an accelerated learning effect. It's a very similar thing. So that's really the how this works. Is it's a very simple process of moving the brain. Where it becomes complex is in how we write the sessions in such a way to help people shift into those states easily. So it's kind of like what it's really doing is shifting you into the meditative state without having to learn meditation. And the problem a lot of meditators or people who try to meditate have is that they promise themselves they're going to do this, and they start it out very well, and they close their eyes and they're meditating. What happens? They start thinking about the laundry, or they start thinking about having to pick up the kids, or their mind starts to wander. And this is all okay, but what happens for a lot of people is they get frustrated because they don't really feel like they're getting anywhere. because already the mind is active. What this system will do is it tends to break mental loops. So going around and around, and boom, it breaks them because you're really a bit overwhelmed by the lights and the sound. And this helps quickly shift you into state. Now, there's another process going on too, because we're also using phototherapy. We're using the color of light to help shift. So white light is used generally all day long with the machine. That's the most common one. Blue light can be used in the morning or for jet lag, because what blue does is it's the same color as the blue sky. And our sleep-wake cycle, our circadian rhythms are actually controlled not by the sun, but by the blue sky. I was working with the head of physiology at Stanford who had a patent on something similar. And I asked, his name's Craig Heller, and I asked Craig, why do you think it's blue light that has this impact? His explanation is that when we were primates, we were living under a deep canopy. So we were getting very little sunlight through the jungle. But what we would see are specks of blue light through it. And so to protect ourselves, so that we would wake up as primates in the morning, it's blue light that is actually the trigger. And what they affect are what are known as the melanopsin photoreceptor cells. And these cells weren't actually discovered until the late 1990s, early 2000. And the reason is because we've got hundreds of millions of rods and cones in our eyes. And even though we knew about these for 200 years, the eye has been studied, we hadn't discovered these specific melanopsin photoreceptor cells for a couple of reasons. One is because there's only a few thousand of them. And the second reason is because they're very hard, it's very hard to find. So what the scientists were looking at is that they were seeing blind people who had balanced circadian rhythms. So they said, well, it can't be the eyeball that's controlling this. It must be something else. They even did experiments behind the knee, putting light behind the knee, light on the wrist, all over, to try and find out what it was that was affecting it. And what they finally discovered is that parallel to the optic nerve is a pipeline, basically, that goes to what's known as the SCN, which is variously described as the traffic cop for our hormonal system. And it's the SCN that controls the release of melatonin. And melatonin is our sleep hormone. So what happens, for example, with here's something interesting with seasonal affective disorder, or winter blues, or winter depression. What's really happening there is that people are not getting enough morning light, because it's morning light before 9 a.m. that is really critical to the balancing of our circadian clock. And so when that doesn't happen, what happens is all day long, it's like you have a leaky faucet. We're getting melatonin that's being released into our system, trying to put us to sleep, because the body is thinking that it's nighttime, when really it's not. And this is where the seasonal affective disorder, depression, arises from. This is why you see these panels you can buy now, these light panels that you can stare in front of. The advantage of our system is, because the lights are so close to the eye, these panels are 10,000 lux, which is like kind of looking into a headlamp from a car. It can be very uncomfortable. It has to be very bright, and they have to be about 40 centimeters from your face, and you have to stare at them for about 45 minutes. However, with the glasses, because it's so close, we don't need all that intensity. We can still have the same effect at a lower intensity. In fact, the head of the Stanford Sleep Clinic said to me, Larry, when we get chronic insomnia patients in here, the very first thing we do is 6:30 in the morning, we put them on a park bench, we leave them out there for 45 minutes. And that's how we start to solve their problems. So that gives you a little background there. And then we also have different colored lights. For example, we have a combination red and blue light. And there was a study from Rensselaer Polytech up in Albany, New York, that showed that red and blue panels at specific frequencies in the afternoon during that phase that they described as the post-lunch dip, and I think we're all familiar with that, where our biorhythms get to a low point in the afternoon and we're drowsy, and that's when we hit coffee, which is probably the thing we shouldn't be doing, but that's when we'll hit coffee in the afternoon, because that late afternoon coffee will actually affect our sleep, causing us to have a deeper post-lunch dip the next day, causing us to want to drink more. So you see, it becomes a vicious cycle. So what the blue and red combination they're showing have done together is it reduces alpha and alpha theta brainwaves, which is what makes us feel drowsy. And Justin, perhaps I should explain real quickly the various brainwave states, just very.
Well, I was going to ask you that, definitely. And before you get into that, I'm just marveling at everything you said so far. And you look back at all these ancient cultures that have mystical powers, the Polynesians and the gods of Hawaii and the waters and the islands. They're so powerful, but they all have drum beats and rhythms that they follow. And then they also have fire and light. And so from the fire, and then especially shaman retreats, like shamans never put fire out. And then they have, the rattlers, the shakers, drums. I mean, it's so impressive to see the wisdom that you've garnered from just studying these great cultures and really recognizing that. That's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And actually the modern brainwave entrainment actually began in 1924 with a German physicist called Hans Berger. And Hans Berger was the first one to discover brainwaves. And he wrote a paper claiming that we had electrical waves emanating from our brain. Well, he was derided by the entire German scientific community and shot down. Obviously, he was proven to be correct later. But then in 1934, two British scientists, Adrian and Matthews, took a strobe with some of these early EEGs, and they found that the strobe was causing changes in brainwave frequencies. So that was one of the very earliest ones. And then 1950, there was a what was his name? Let me think for a second here. There was a scientist named Sidney Schneider. That's right, Sidney Schneider. And he and another gentleman found, let me back up. They were hired by the U.S. Air Force. And the reason they were hired by the U.S. Air Force is because the radar men in the early 1950s were looking at the green blip. They had those round screens you see in the old movies, the round green and blip, blip, blip. And they were going completely in a trance. They were gone. And so the Air Force wanted to figure out what the heck was going on. And what they discovered was that the blip was at 10 hertz, which is that alpha brainwave state. And from that, these guys then developed a device that was about the size of a shoebox with a bulb in it. And you had 3 controls on it where you could control the various brainwave frequencies and stand in front of this device or sit in front of this device and get entrained. And they first sold it for labor pain. And then it started to go to psychologists and to psychiatrists and to experimenters. So they were in business from 1959 to about 1974 with these devices. The interesting thing is, right around that point is when biofeedback came into vogue in the mid-70s. So these guys, there's really no history, very little history you can find on them. It went out of business, I suspect because biofeedback became the big thing back then, the big discovery. But then in the mid-'80s is when LEDs came, the first red LEDs came out, and that's when these machines started to get developed for the consumer. So it was about then, I came in very early, about 1990, as I said. So pretty much at the beginning of the growth of this area. And so I said I would talk a little bit about the brainwave states. So, basically 5 brainwave states. Gamma is a very high frequency state. And what research has found is that Buddhist monks that can get into deep, deep states show increased gamma activity when they go into a very deep state. So there's still a lot to learn, a lot of discovery being made at gamma. And gamma is a very high brainwave frequency. Below that is beta. And beta is where we are right now. Beta is your normal thinking, waking state. You have various types of beta. If you have high intensity beta, sometimes that can be why you feel anxiety or why you go into the fight and flight area, where adrenaline is flowing and all of this, which is a safety mechanism. Low beta is where we will spend most of our thinking time, and it can put us into deep focus in the right beta state. And then right below that is that alpha state that I described before, the focused alert state. Below that is theta. And theta was Alexander Graham Bell. What he would do is he would take a couple steel balls and put them in his hand and either stand by a wall or sit there with a bowl of water below him. And he'd allow himself in the afternoon to doze off. And as he dozed off, he'd open his hand and the balls would fall. And he'd wake up and he'd think about what was going on in his brain at the time. What was he dreaming? Because theta is that creative state. And we don't spend lots of time in theta generally. We go in what's known as theta spikes. So we can go sometimes just a couple of seconds, sometimes a few minutes, and then come back out and go into alpha or deep alpha. So theta is that creative state. And then right below theta is delta. And this is very slow wave. And delta is where infants, for example, when they're sleeping, spend almost all their time in delta. But as we get older, we spend less and less time in that deep wave state. And that's the state of physical restoration, physical and mental restoration. It's the deep dreamless state that we go to. So there you have the little quick background into the various states.
That's phenomenal. Now, one of the things I love about your product is that you have progression and sequences to really tap into a lot of those, and then when the lights are on, when they go to turn off, they just slowly harmonize and slowly dim down. They don't just like stop. So it's like your brain doesn't go into a shock or trauma from the session ending. So let's talk to me about those levels. And then one of the things is your product's so simple, you don't have a digital readout of it. And I'm okay with that. I love that because the products out on the market, they're $5,000 plus licensing fees. You can only use them for a certain amount of times and you have to pay more. They're on up to $15,000 for unbelievable, work, but they just give you a little digital feedback. And really, quite honestly, probably the only difference. And yours is, offering for $350. And I have a feeling, check below, we're going to offer a discount for the Go Beyond Summit viewers. So, but tell us, where should we look at being? What's a great alpha state for someone to really find that's a professional athlete, or someone like me that wants to elevate my intuitive powers and my healing powers? And then what's a great theta state for someone to be in so we can really reverse engineer and create our destiny, like visualize, create that image of where we're supposed to be, because the mind doesn't know the difference between reality, imagination, and memory, and make it so that it's actually happened so we can create it. Where should we be in those stages?
Yeah, great question. And that leads into another thing here. The effect of these devices is cumulative, meaning that it's just like physical exercise or meditation or yoga, that you do it once or twice, you'll feel something, from it, but really the benefit comes over time. And what we explain to the people that use MindSpa is allow it 4 to 6 weeks of regular use. What we do explain to customers is if you can use it every day, that's great. It's not necessary, because what we don't want to do is put a negative in there where, oh God, I missed a day, it's not going to work for me. It's really just consistent use that's important. And there's no particular session. The machine comes with 18 sessions. There's no particular session for a particular purpose. It is because each of us as individual will respond differently to the sessions. This is why we give 18 sessions of various lengths, various depths, and frequencies, so that what you will tend to do is the individual, because we're empowering the user, will tend to gravitate to the sessions they find work best for them to reach the goals that they're trying to reach. So it's really the regular use, and then experimenting around a little bit with the sessions, trying the different sessions and seeing what you really like. And the way we design the machine is we have what we call the progressive relaxation system, meaning session 2 is a little deeper, a little longer than session 1, session 3, a little more than session 2. So the first 6 sessions, for example, will be alpha. The next several sessions will be theta. The next several sessions will be delta. And then we have some beta sessions for stimulation at the end of that. And it's really what we suggest with individuals is try one of the first 6 sessions for the first couple of weeks. You don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can jump around a little bit. It's really an individual thing. And that I didn't exactly answer your question about which is the ultimate one for theta, because to get into theta, you really need to practice. It's here, good example. So if I give you a barbell and I start you out with a really heavy barbell, oh, you might lift it once or twice, but you're not getting that repetitive exercise from it. So you're not really building. But if you start out light and build up, then when you get to the heavier, the deeper theta, it'll be that much more effective for you. And it's just like meditation. So the benefits, all the benefits that research are showing from meditation, you will get similar benefits from using these kinds of technologies.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, I absolutely love the product. It's just so portable, cost effective, and it actually has tremendous benefits. I mean, you do the first session and they range from about 22 minutes on up to just over an hour. Is that correct? Or how long?
Right. Yeah, no, that's approximately right. Yeah. We have a short too.
Yeah, and you can just zone out, you lay down. I like to use it with your feet up in more of the restorative pose where your feet are up at 90-degree angle. You can check out, but then you can also use these with your eyes open. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And as I explained, that's really good for ADD, ADHD kids. Most people are going to use it with the eyes closed because it's very relaxing. And that's what we suggest. But yes, you can also use it with eyes open, particularly if you're using it, as I explained, for the blue light benefit. Oh, and that's something else I should explain. The other thing this is really good for is jet lag. And I've always said to people, even if I wasn't in this business, I'd own one of these just for its jet lag benefits, because I've been using it. I use it I get asked this question. Yes, I've been using it on a regular basis all these years since 1990. And I continue to get wonderful benefit from it. But I frequently travel over to Asia because we manufacture over there and develop. And I can snap out of jet lag in a day now, where it used to take me a week. And it really is using the lights and getting into that relaxed state. What's
your favorite? Yeah, what's your favorite frequency to use on it? What's your favorite?
Well, on the plane, for example, the way I use it is if I want to sleep or get some rest, I'll use the longest session on the plane and just use it for relaxation at that time. But then I'll use the blue light morning time destination. So when it's like, let me think, 2 a.m. here, be like morning, or take that back. we're 15 hours different here on the Pacific coast from there. So what I'll do is when it's morning time there, the plane may be all quiet and everything, everyone's sleeping. I'll get up, I'll walk around, I'll stretch, I'll get 2 cups of coffee. Even though it's middle of the night for us, I'll get 2 cups of coffee, drink those real quick, because caffeine then acts as a drug, and it helps. You're telling your system, hey, I want you to wake up now, and you're telling your system, I'm going to change. I'm going to change something, and then I'll put on the blue light and use it that way. And then when I get to my destination, inevitably at some point during the day, provided I have the time in the day, because usually I hit the ground running, and I'm going from 6 a.m. when I arrive until sometimes midnight the very first day, nonstop. But when I find time, I'll get back to my hotel, and in the afternoon I'll throw the lights on and put myself into a deep state, but try not to go to sleep. What you don't want to do on your first day is sleep in the middle of the day, destination time, because you're fighting your body. Your body is saying it's time for me to sleep, or it's time for breakfast. And in the afternoon, your body is telling you, give me some caffeine. I want caffeine because you always give it to me at this hour. So those are the things you avoid. And you use caffeine in the morning, destination time, and you use the lights, and that combination, along with some exercise, which is really, really important, getting outside and just walking, really resets your body clock extremely quick.
Awesome. Well, I love it. It's just so fantastic. Guys, everyone, check out avstim.com. Like I said, Larry's going to offer a special limited time discount for our Go Beyond Summit viewers and listeners. So check it out. Go to gobeyondsummit.com, see the links below, and see what he has to offer. But you're going to want to get it for your holiday stocking stuffers. You're going to want to get it and take advantage of that. I'm so excited. Larry, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. What an incredible product to help so many people go beyond with their sleep. And the sleep is one of the biggest things. And when you could start to find that rhythm and use this product consistently, you're going to get into those deep sleep states that you've been really wanting to get into. And so that's what we love about the Mind Spa, is that once you're there, then you could rest, digest, heal, and be just an incredible performer the next day because you're not fatigued. And just finding that sync with your brain waves is just remarkable. And Larry's created this Mind Spa, which is one of the best and easiest solutions that you can possibly have to get you where you want to be, which is a full, great, deep REM sleep night's rest.
Yeah, and let me say, we also have a free ebook. If you register on our site, you can download it. It's an 80-page ebook that gives you tons of information on everything I just discussed, plus more. And it acts as a companion for the device. The device comes with an easy-to-use manual, and a quick start guide. But for those who like to read, we have a lot of information, plus a lot of information on the website, a lot of research, a lot of articles. Just a lot of educational material for people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Larry, for going beyond with us.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate it.